what it might entail. And so if you look at this building right here, this is about what you'd expect a higher end player house inside of Solara to be in terms of size. Obviously we want to be wary of limits, but instancing is not the hardest thing in the world. And I think that that's really feasible, considering how we have everything set up so far. We won't know until we start implementing multiplayer, but there's that. And then just for the purpose of this world, that will be a tavern the next time we get here. It will have a pool table. It'll have not broken as fuck occlusions, right? But that's kind of the goal for the next time we get here. Obviously, there still needs to be work done on this world. By show of hands, who here has seen the update video and or pictures that I posted yesterday about the new terrain system that we've been working on? Okay, cool. Good few of you. So I know it's hard to tell in VR, or not in VR, the scope of a VR game, because you can look at something flat screen and it not be the most telling whenever you're looking at something that is supposed to be in VR. That tree that was in that video is about 3.5 times the size of that tree.
Oh.
So in the demo, we've been able to put together a world that is just massive, right? We've been able to put together assets that are massive and look great thanks to a bunch of shader techniques and some really cool texture optimizations. But whenever you guys get in there for the first time, I was telling my wife yesterday, I was considerably emotional when I got in that test for the first time. It proved to me that we are doing something great and that this is happening. It's a thing that's actually happening. Something I never expected to happen over decades, because we've been told time and time again we're going to have a big VR MMO that fills those once, but we haven't gotten it. And so I'm really excited for those of you that are in the testing program. Obviously we're going to have to go through NDAs and all that stuff. And for those of you that aren't and applied, I'm going to go through the applications tonight. I know that we had a little bit of a hash out with the first round because I didn't have the name thing sorted out. But there's that. If you guys want to go look around the house, you can. You can't go inside. But these are actual in-game assets that we're using, so you guys can look around and see some of the things that we're using now. Keep in mind they are going to look decently different because it's a completely different rendering pipeline. If anybody here knows anything about setting up VR chat worlds, they use a completely different pipeline. You have to use completely different shaders. But these are assets that we're using. This is the style that we're going for, and so you can expect to see a lot of this in Solara, which is the name that is replacing Riverwall, by the way. We do have an official name for our main player town, and it is Solara, which roughly translates from Greek to the place where the first star fell, right? And so we'll talk more about lore in a bit. We have this whole big storyline planned, especially whenever it comes to, let me get that. There you go. Especially whenever it comes to setting up kind of the stage for you as a player going into the world for the first time. But hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight. And like I said, we'll have something a lot stronger and a lot more optimized the next time you guys get here. Before we go back over to the stage, because more people are joining, does anybody have any questions about any of that?
I'm just kind of excited to see things.
Yeah, it'll be a lot better the next time around. This is not my best work.
It's a work in progress.
Not by a long shot.
It's okay.
Let's go ahead and head back over to the stage. Like I said, I know that Wandering and Sax just got here, and we can go from there.
Quick peek over here.
So also, I don't know if you guys noticed, I have wings now, right? We were talking about the concept of like guardians as game masters, and so this is just kind of a concept that we've put together. This is in no way final. But the idea is that game masters or moderators who have to inevitably inject themselves into games like this should do so in a way that doesn't break immersion. Because because if you've ever played any game, and I'm sure some people here have played Gmod, they've played on Gmod servers. There is nothing more immersion breaking than having someone fly down from the sky or float down from the sky, pick you up, and fly you away. And we kind of want to break anything, or we want to turn away from anything that's gonna mess with immersion. So there's that. What I'm gonna go ahead and do is, hey Jester, if any of the people in the stage channel have questions and we don't have any other questions pending, feel free to ask them. I don't mind answering them one at a time.
Will do.
Oh. Also, you guys are welcome to raise your hand if you have questions. I need to change my music. Beautiful. Sweet. I would have also gotten a theme out for Solara this week, or for this level, but we just got a new kitten, and one of them chewed through my keyboard cable, made it a little hard to get that done. I have a new one coming in tomorrow, so we'll be able to get some work on that. Also, I want to throw out there, we have reached over $700 a month in our Patreon, which is, first of all, that's incredible, right? For the amount of people that we have, that is an incredibly high number for how long this has been a project. So, I mean, things are going very well. And thank all of you, seriously. I mean, this game is, like every game, an idea, and then a dream, or in some cases switch that. But it'll always stay one of those two if there isn't kind of forward progress. And you all have shown me that this is a very possible thing. Not just possible, but it's happening actively. I'm very excited to say that at this rate, we will have a fully fledged VR MMO in a few years, which is, I mean, come on, that's something that I never thought I'd be able to say out loud, because we've been waiting on it for years. Speaking of which, does anybody have any questions about the Patreon or how any of those benefits work, or about our transition to Kickstarter? Because I know that we've chatted a bit about that transition. I want to make sure that we're all transparent on that. God, you guys are making this easy for me. Okay. And I say easy, I mean hard, because I'm having to come up with stuff to talk about. Okay, so here's some stuff that I have been working on. I planned a little footnote list because I figured it'd be better to have something to talk about than otherwise. You guys have seen the initial state of blacksmithing. It's very basic. There's not a lot to do. But I just wanted to put, kind of the concepts out there, so we have at least some sort of, hey, this is the kind of direction that we're taking. This is what we want to do with this specific set of mechanics. Now, recently, I've been kind of frameworking cooking out. I think that Zenith did a good job of cooking, but I think we can do better. It is a little upsetting that there hasn't been more of a substantive thing in this regard, and so what I've been currently working on is setting up armatures for food items. So what you'll see, and hopefully what I can have a short demo on next, is take like a good cut of meat that can get sliced into large pieces, like steaks, for example. The way that I have it set up currently is to where they're all armatured out as individual sets of bones, and so as you cut through a piece of meat, it'll actually just fall off as you'd expect it to. And we have some plans on how we'll handle inventory, but it should be a much more streamlined system. The idea is that everything should feel good, whether it's combat or not, right? So the act of cutting through, a piece of meat or a vegetable should feel good. It should sound good. It should feel good. It should be intuitive. So we're kind of working a little bit on the framework there. And then, as you guys saw in the garden area, we've kind of branched out in terms of town building, because you can work on, some of those things simultaneously. And so I have some of the world builders, namely Miller and Sarah. Their goal right now is to kind of get that area fleshed out, because one of the things that I know that a lot of us have been wanting is an area where you can just sit and breathe, right? Suffice to say, I don't think there's been a VR MMO where you can do that. with it being meaningful. And what I mean by that is the big tree that I was talking about, the tree that's in our current world that's, 3.5 times the size of that tree, for those of you that just got here, that's there for a reason. There's a narrative reason for it existing. And it's right next to the Founder's Fountain, which also has a narrative reason for existing. For those of you that saw the previews, our grass systems are performing incredibly well. We're working to make them dynamic with players. Ideally, you will be able to sit down and see not nothing but grass, but you'll be able to just see the plains in every direction. You'll see the wind roll over them in waves. You'll get to look around and watch as the area around you breathes and is full of life. And that is something that I think that we have all wanted, or at least I know I have, right, for a long time. So, we've made really good progress on our terrain system. It looks great. It performs well, which I'm very excited about. I posted a video to the supporters chat. I'll probably post another one to general tonight so you guys can all see it. But we have this terrain system working at over 100 FPS with just a large, fuck all plane of grass. In that one demo that I had, for those of you in the supporters videos, that was 36 million trigons. In that scene alone, everything that could be seen, it was 36 mil, which, for 100 frames a second in VR is, that's pretty solid, right? So at the very least, we have a strong foundation. Will we ever need to render that much at once? No, but we can. The point is we have set up the framework for it to look as good as we could possibly want it to look. And that's very important because it's very little things that make a world feel alive, right? You look at the tree, you can see the dappling of the light come through the leaves and reflect on the ground, right? It moves actively. I couldn't get it working in this world because the built-in render pipeline really just doesn't like me. But the shadows are reflected onto the grass and the indirect, through them. Whenever the sun rises, the light peeks through all of that, and you can see it just kind of cross the valley. There's a lot that I'm super excited to show you guys. Obviously, we have a lot of work to do to get those things set up, and I probably would have gotten a little bit more done if it wasn't for me trying to get this done in time. But at the very least, we're here. Does anybody have any questions about terrain or anything like that while I'm on the topic?
I do.
What's up, Jester?
So a question from the town square is, with terrain and immersion being worked on, will we see creatures based off of biomes running around, such as rabbits, birds, and will they also play into the hunting and skinning skills? That is from Kia Frost.
Great question, and yes. Obviously, there are two types of creatures, at least in terms of what we want for the wild, and that is monsters, and that, I guess you can call them non-monsters, but basically anything that doesn't fall into that combative monster category. There will be some that kind of blend the lines, like wolves or, certain aggressive animals, but there will be a bunch of animals that are, and this is not a big performance hit, but a bunch of, animals that are small or are docile, that move around, whose, sole purpose is, besides making the world feel alive, it exists as a means for hunting. Obviously hunting is one of those skills that it's not really implemented. Township has it, but, there's a lot of those are treated as enemies. So we have a pretty strong plan in place for animals, especially whenever it comes to hunting and skills related.
I've got two more. Just let me copy them over real quick.
Sure, go for it. Since all these people are sitting nice and quietly, I feel like we're doing silent reading right now.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jester, when you're ready.
So the second one is, what software is currently in use for the assets such as cooking and terrain?
Sorry, did you say what software?
Yes, so the full question is, I take it you have, or someone within the team, utilizing modeling softwares for designing the assets for cooking assets. What softwares are currently in use?
Okay, so we are using Unity with a stack of UXR, URP, Vivix, Fmod. There's one more, I forgot what it was. But in terms of the back end, we're using Blender for modeling, setting up armatures, weight painting. There was one thing that I was maybe looking into for clothing modeling, but we're probably not going to use it because its industry is very expensive. And then all of our code tools, because I think I might have heard him say something about code tools. It'll just depend on the developer. Obviously, everyone using Unity has to use the Visual Studio set. I use Visual Studio Code. I'm sure that there are developers here who use Visual Studio Code because it's superior. No, we're not building this game off of Arch, right? But yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Cool. And then one from Tholdrin. Speaking of terrain, how will the terrain be modified due to things like mining and logging?
Great question. So there's a level of balance whenever it comes to objects in the world that can be interacted with in such a way. Because there is the trade-off of if I have an object that is not interactable, that I can't get anything from, it is static, and as such, there's a performance increase, or it's a detail in the world, and then it's, done thrice so. On the other side, you have objects that are completely interactable, but they're individual game objects, and as such have their own, they have their own server load, they have their own client load, especially whenever it comes to rendering. And then you have the obvious wrong solution, which is to have static items have colliders that also produce things. Because if I cut down, a tree and get logs from it and it sits there unfazed, not great for immersion. So it's going to be a balance, but what we want to do is set the stage for it not to be this awkward finding out process. If any of you have ever played a game that includes those features, you've had the trouble before of, hey, how do I know that this tree is cuttable and this one isn't? How do I know that I'm supposed to be able to mine from this rock but not the other one, right? And so in terms of actually making sure that those things are distinct, we're working on it, right? But generally, whenever you interact with pieces of the world, they should respond to that, right? If you mine from a rock or a node or something, it should react physically. It shouldn't just sit there while it gives you stuff. Same with trees. I mean, you should be able to cut down trees, and we have a bunch of plans in place to implement that the best we can. But I can't really say much until we start to get previews up.
And then one more.
What's up, Demonic?
Just asking, are resources going to be player instanced? So, like, you chop down a tree, can another player come around and chop the tree?
Great question. We have a few systems planned, but I think this is going to be one of those things that'll come out through testing. We've already had the discussion. I've already had the discussion of like, well, I mean, to what degree do we let other players, interject fights? Should monsters be player instanced? And so the question comes down to immersion, which we want immersion. Immersion's the biggest thing here because it's supposed to be a full scale VR title. Immersion's very important for us. If the person to the right of me cuts down a tree, ideally we want that tree to fall. Now, will that happen 100%? I don't know. But what I do know is that immersion is the priority. So if there's anything that I can do to make sure that that isn't capped, even if it means ensuring that there are enough resources in a large enough space for players to be able to interact with them in whole, it might be as simple as, hey, this person's cutting down trees and they're not they're not player instanced. I might just go find another set of trees to go cut down. What do the cooldowns look like? We don't know yet, but do know that immersion is priority. You guys will get previews on that probably in the coming weeks. Any other questions while I'm face to the crowd?
Yes.
All right, Jester, go ahead.
Kia Frost asked, would Unity be able to handle dark caves that need to be illuminated by torches or such?
Yes. That's not a hard thing to do. Any other questions while we're
Yeah, I have one.
Go for it, Sky.
When it comes to cooking, how detailed is that going to be? Like, is it going to be on like the SAO end where you like do an interaction and then it chops it for you, or are you gonna have to go through every individual step?
We are going to make it as hands-on as possible. And I say as possible because we don't know what can be handled yet. But, whenever we talked about life skills previously, one of the things we wanted was a life skill should be able to be substantive as an experience on its own. Eventually we want it to where a player who wants to do nothing but cook can do so and be satisfied by the experience. And so in that vein, especially because we're in VR, you will do the individual steps. Will it be as precise or as entailing quality as a lot of people like to draft? We don't know yet. But in the current setup that I have, I know I was talking about cooking mechanics a little bit ago. I mean, it is literally you put your hand on this big chunk of beef, and you slice individually through, and it splits at your cut, and then you have a piece of meat that you're cooking with, right? I'll get a video on that soon so you can see what I'm talking about, but it's definitely going to be a lot more involved than a general interaction, and then something happens to it afterwards, and then you're done. Hopefully that answers your question.
It did. So as a little addition onto that, since there's gonna be like I think as I've read, is there going to be player shops? So let me phrase this question.
It is one of our primary goals. Yes. Sorry,
Okay.
I should probably preface that better. We are setting the framework for it to happen. I don't want this to be a thing that is promised and then we're like, oh, we don't know if we can handle it. No, player shops, at least on a very basic level, will exist, and we'll build upon it as we can.
Okay, so if I were to, let's say, want to open a restaurant or a butcher shop, would that be something I would be able to?
Yes. So the idea with the economy, and I'm glad you brought that up, because player economy is one of the things that makes an MMO, if any of you have ever played one. And sometimes a lot of those systems can seem very surface level if you're not careful. And so whenever we're drafting a lot of these economy systems, the idea is a shop is cool, but how can we take that a step further, right? How can we make the economy more involved? And if you want a shop that sells food, well, that is essentially just a restaurant, right? And so the way to account for that is to give you the tools to be able to do so correctly, right? Give you a space where players can sit and can interact with each other while you work on those things. The social experience is really important, and to kind of encourage those things, there's going to be incentives for it as well. So if someone comes into your restaurant, sits down, and has a meal, they'll have a pretty decent collective of buffs from doing so. So yes, and yes.
Thank you so much.
Minstrel, did you have something, or were you just stretching out?
Yes. So given that you're going for the whole inspired by SAO, is the different areas going to be separated into floors, or will it just be one continuous kind of expansive?
Great question. So I talked a little bit about it in the forums. We are not doing the floor system. And I never really got a chance to actually sit down and talk about why it's a bad idea. I want the world to be beautiful and interconnected and polished. I want you to go around and feel like you're not just in a video game, like you're in an interconnected world, right? And while the floors concept is very cool, it detracts from that connectiveness. And it also means a lesser quality on individual pieces, right? If we have one large world that's, the equivalent of 3 or 4 total floors as one big thing, it's probably going to be a lot more qualitative and a lot more connected, which is important for sociality, than 100 separate floors with separate cities, especially if servers encapsulate an entire game instance, right? So we will not be taking the floor system approach. We want to make an individual and distinct world that is connected, that has its own identity, and doesn't follow that convention.
So kind of building on that a little, what kind of biomes do you have planned?
Great question. So, as you guys could tell by some of the screenshots that we have, Solara, which is the main player town, is sitting pretty much right in the middle of the plains biome, right? And so as it stands in that kind of first general area, we have the plains, and then as you move uphill, which you guys will see some of that terrain sloping soon, you'll get kind of into more of an Arctic mountainous set of terrain. We want a very large forest area. I think that there is a lot of potential with a large forest that is done right. We want areas on shorelines like beaches that serve, both as gathering spots and as places for players to hang out. I would love if it moved in kind of a Monster Hunter direction, and we saw some areas that were not very traditional but are very interesting. Like the oil well basin in Monster Hunter Wilds is a great example, right? Where you go and you're in this completely different ecosystem that is defined by the ecosystem. The way that it looks is defined by the way that everything interacts with each other. I'd like it if you could go towards some volcanic areas where you fight fire monsters. There's definitely a lot of potential for a lot of different areas, and so the best answer that I can give you now is there will be a strong variety. What that variety is yet, we're not 100% set on because anything can change. But there will be a pretty heavy variety in the places you can go to.
So does that mean there will be potential for like an ocean biome where players could say if they were a fisherman, they could go out on a boat of X size and yeah?
Yes. Boats are part of the fishing loop that we've been drafting, so yes.
I have 3 from the Discord, and you got a second.
All right, Jester, go ahead and give me your best shot.
What kind of balance are you looking for in terms of time to make food? Would it take like 30 minutes to cook a portion?
Great question, though. So one of the biggest challenges that we have for a VR game is balancing time and effort, right? Because I want to have a world where you can spend hours in and it feel fine. And I want a lot of these things that you can do, crafting, cooking, blacksmithing, to be engaging, but at the same time, it's also a game, right? If it takes me 30 minutes to make one piece of food, that's a big time expanse. It's a big time dump. And time is the most valuable resource that a player has, right? Can we all agree on that? I don't know. Some of you might have a shit ton of money and you think it's money, but time is really the important one, right? And so, that balance is going to come down to what is a reasonable amount of time where you feel like you've accomplished something satisfying, but if something goes terribly wrong, you didn't feel like you just completely wasted that time. Now, that'll change as development progresses, and also it'll change with certain things that you can do. Me crafting a knife or smithing a knife is going to take a lot less time than me smithing a greatsword. A lot less time than me smithing a giant warhammer or whatever. The same way that me making a big giant pot roast might be less involved, but would take more time than me grilling a single steak. So the balance is really just figuring out what leaves players satisfied without ruining the experience if something goes wrong. That'll come with testing. We'll get a lot of testing data whenever it comes to those things, and people will be able to tell us, hey, this feels like a long experience for this one thing, and then we can adjust from there.
Cool. Following that is, would businesses be run automatically, or would they be active only when the player is logged into the game?
This is a tough one that we have had trouble deciding on for a minute. There is obviously there's an incentive for both directions where you can have your shop run in the background, and then there's also the possibility of it running only when you're on. And so the current mentality is that we want players to be involved when things are happening, right? Let's say, especially whenever we consider balance, let's say that I am a gold merchant. I sell gold, and I mean like ore gold, not currency, right? Let's just say I have just an absolute fuck ton of gold, and then I get off, and then I don't play for 2 months, and I have this gold shop that's that big, that's sitting right in the middle of town, that's doing nothing but getting me money. While this other person, you, Willis, you have been, let me take that invite. You, Willis, have been busting your ass off to get a shop every day for the last 2 months, and you can't because my big fuck all shop is taking a plot. So there's probably going to be a balance. Now, I will say, if any of you have ever played Final Fantasy, they do have God, what's the name of the people that you can assign items to and they'll trade for you on the market? What is that called? Does anyone remember?
The retainers.
Retainers, great. So the good thing about retainers is that they work for you in the background, but they don't take up any space. The other good thing is that with a retainer, you are not taking a plot from somebody. On the back end, this is not a hard thing to implement, but on the front end where it's important, you are more likely to go to me if I'm in front of you than you are to go to a retainer. There might even be, a retainer fee. Where you are incentivized to go to a player that is actively online. So it encourages, those shop owners to actually be online so they can make that business and do so with incentives, but it also encourages the players to do so. Will we restrict people from being able to sell stuff while they're offline outright? I don't think so. We're just going to have to find a system that works, and that'll come with time.
And last one.
Hold on, before you check that, these people are here. What's up, Monica?
It's just a comment. Final Fantasy does
Sure.
a tax system, so maybe implementing a tax with retainers. But if you go to a player shop, they don't have a tax. That might work.
Right. That's a good idea. That's one of the things that we're considering now. It might be the direction that we take. I want to be careful about taking so much from Final Fantasy. 14 has some flaws, but it does do a pretty good job of having good systems. But yeah, it's definitely something we want to consider. Jester? Oh, is that a leg pop?
Wrong button. How would the in-game supply and demand of ingredients/item supply interact with the remaining economy?
Great question. So we talk about player economy, and we talk about inflow and outflow, right? And so inflow is anything that is introduced that does not come directly from the economy, right? So players obtaining items from monsters after they've killed them, that's inflow. Or gold from getting it from an NPC shop that has unlimited gold, that's inflow. The same way that using those items or selling those items is outflow, or selling them to places outside of the economy is outflow. And it's probably going to come down to a system of management. I talked a lot about the game masters being a big part of what we do and how a lot of this system is going to work. At a certain point, we are going to have to regulate at least a little bit inflow and outflow. It's the way the economy survives, because if not, it can blow up and then never recover, right? I know some of you remember the early days of Final Fantasy. World of Warcraft economy busting was huge. So, there's definitely some steps that we have to take, and a lot of that comes with the foundation of being able to handle those things. Let's say that, there is just so much fuck all beef. We'll just say beef for the purpose of demonstration. Let's just say there's an incredulous amount of beef in the world, right? We understand that beef is not very valuable, and there's a lot of it out there. Well, the way to cut back on that is to either cull rates, which, by the way, I don't like the idea of you killing an animal and not getting something like beef from it. I think that's silly. The correct way to do that is to cull the sources, right? So less cows in the world. They spawn a little less, If there's that much beef and it sells for that cheap, no one's going to be upset with that. At least I wouldn't. And if you have a beef dynasty or whatever, then I think you're foolish for, being so specific about what you're trying to do. But the idea is that, we can modulate a lot of those things, right? If I want to tweak the cow spawn rate a little bit so it can start to work out of the economy, right? If people who are chefs and do cooking make enough of that and sell it outright to either NPC shops that generate that income or to players that end up consuming that, then, as long as the outflow is more than the inflow, we can control that. And vice versa, right? If there's not enough inflow of a certain item or product, then we can adjust that, because 100% of the things that people are going to use to craft and make stuff are going to come from the world. There's not going to be anything in a shop that you can't get out in the wild. So, there's obviously a level of moderation that we have. And again, that'll just come with tweaking and observing the way that other MMOs have done it for a very long time.
Sorry, I had to yawn.
No, you're good. Any
So
questions while we're on these topics? What's up, Sammy?
So we were talking about world scale a little earlier, and it kind of leads into this as well. Are there going to be some resources you can get from some areas that you can't get to other areas? And kind of like managing trading between, I guess, those 2 points.
Good question. So for a second there, I thought your question was about rarity, but I see where you're going at now, and that will depend on whether or not we set up a different player-centric locations. Obviously, right now, especially in initial builds, our first is Solara. And so as it stands, the only rare items that you'd be able to get are ones that are, not local, but with only one player area. It's not like other player areas are restricted from those. The only thing that rarity comes into play with is an area being dangerous, at least for now. So there are going to be some areas where you as a player might not be ready to go to. And then comes
Right.
the loop of other people, um, you know, hiring you or hiring other adventurers or warriors or whatever to go do that for them. We kind of want to localize that gameplay loop just a tiny bit. Will we have the means to have other player areas and explore those possibilities? If the game does well, maybe. But we'll see.
Okay. So, I guess that leads into my next question. Like,
Sure.
from one end of the world to the other, currently, what's the distance for that approximately?
So a lot of it is what we're kind of guessing with our terrain system. If I had to put a number on a goal, um, I'd say that it should ideally take a player, um, the upper end of an hour to reasonably walk from one end to the other. Is that possible? Maybe. Is that undercutting it? It's possible, especially with how well things are performing. But we want the world to feel big. We want to make sure that a lot of that space is meaningfully filled, which is a big problem that a lot of open world games have. It doesn't matter how big a world is if it's empty. And so a lot of it will just be us trying to figure out what we can reasonably accomplish. Ideally, the world would be very large. You don't have anything to worry there. To the point where mounts are one of the things that are on we will do anything that we can to get them working properly list. So
Okay. And in lieu of like a mount system, would there be like any means of fast traveling, like maybe some form of vehicle, like carriages or airships, maybe? I know you mentioned boats
we have
earlier.
Sure. So our first goal is horses, right? Horses that you can actually take care of. Will it be an extensive system like Red Dead Redemption 2? I'm doubtful. But there's, that's base level. And so whenever it comes to longer distance travel or altitude travel, we want things like gliders. I think carriages are a great idea. We'd love to explore them, especially if we get horses working well. The other big thing that I want to experiment with is fast travel in a way that is meaningful. I want ideally any player to be able to fast travel to the main town from where they're at, right? That as a concept, as a mechanic, is not a problematic thing to do. The problem is balancing what areas should be able to be fast traveled to, what those landmarks and points of interest are, so that exploration doesn't become meaningless either. The idea is that we want to make those mounts powerful enough, freeing enough for you to go out and actually explore the world, which I feel is something that we've also been missing for a while. So that's where I'll leave it for now. But I will kind of sit with Jester and we'll draft over some of that stuff, and I'll get back to you.
Cool.
Jester, you got any for me?
No, I believe you already answered the follow-up that I had.
What's up, Socks?
Add my overlay up.
No, you're all good. So we're just all hanging out now.
Cool.
Guess so.
What's up, Demonic?
I was just saying, guess so.
I was curious
Oh, my
about
bad.
the
Tongue demons.
giant statue.
Oh, Emmy. Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and just while we're here, let's go ahead and look. Um, if you guys want to come this way real quick, we'll get a better view of it. So I'm fine talking about this and it not being an NDA, because it's just words, right? I've considered a lot of legal recourse for a lot of the things that we want to develop, but a story is not something that I think people will be so willing to steal. Even so, it fits our world probably better than most, I'd say. And the story and kind of its general plot is something I'm happy disclosing. Story time, guys. This is the goddess of Asteria, Emmy. And why she exists or why she is beholden to this place, we don't know. What we do know, however, is that Emmy is the guiding force powered by the light of the stars for the people of Asteria. Asteria stands for Asteria, which roughly translates from Greek as the place where starlight fills the air. And Solara, is the place where the first star fell, or star's landing. And so the general idea with the world, and might be a little spoilerish, but you will learn about it very early on in the game. To the point where I wouldn't consider it discovered information because we have a lot planned for that. The idea is that there is a great wyvern that has killed, mercilessly and indiscriminately slaughtered thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people. But instead of killing them outright, the wyvern damns them to this realm, which is Asteria, under the impression that they will die almost immediately because it's so chock full of monsters who are ravenous and beyond comprehension and consciousness that the second you hit the ground in Asteria, you are killed almost immediately, right? And so the idea with Asteria and Solara is that there was one person who fought against the odds to not die outright under the guidance of the Guardian and the goddess Emmy, and as such was able to help build a resistance and set up the front for more people who made it to Asteria to survive. And then eventually they are able to, through a very long period of withstanding, able to rebuild society. And so eventually there is a point where long period of withstanding survive just immediately on the game. And so eventually there is a point where long period of withstanding survive just immediately on the game. And so eventually there is a point where long period of withstanding survive just immediately on the game. And so eventually there is a point where long period of withstanding survive just immediately on the game. And so eventually there is a point where long period of withstanding survive just immediately on the game. And so eventually there is a point where, and that is the start of the game. We survive just immediately. Some things that are player driven. But I think that too many games kind of just put you in a new place without telling you why. I also think that players being connected by one general event is a very strong way to kind of build that connection. At the very least, it's not like a Final Fantasy thing where it's like, I'm the Warrior of Light, and then you're like, oh, I'm also the Warrior of Light, and then you're like, hey, guess what? I'm also the Warrior of Light, No, every single player is beholden and joined by this one awful, terrible thing. And canonically, it's true for every single one of us. I think it's a strong angle. We have a lot of things that we want to do to kind of refine that, and there are a lot of things that I can't tell you, which is why I'm being a little shaky about it, because there are some things that are very specific that are NDA bound, but that's kind of the goal. That's the general idea with those statues. So if you see them around, that's what that means. What's up?
Sorry. Are you going to be able to climb the statue? just curious. Because I feel like it'd be really fun to go up there and glide all the way down. I won't lie.
You know, I hadn't considered it, but I don't see why not. You know? Climbing, we want to exist for most, if not everything. I mean, I see a tall spot like that at the top of a tree, and assuming I have the stamina to do it, yeah, let me climb up there. So, as much as I'd love to be like, no, that's the goddess Emmy, she'll knock you off if you do or whatever. No, I think it's a great idea.
I love
Maybe
it.
make it a challenge.
Yeah.
Those
Get a
who can
small
get to
item
the
for doing it.
top.
It's a real cool concept.
Bro, he gone.
I have a question.
I hope you
from
enjoyed the whole
Discord.
bunch of nothing out there.
Oh yeah.
Any other
That's
questions?
gonna take a long
about
time to get up there.
Any questions about this? Yeah, I know, it's big as fuck. Any questions about the storyline or kind of that involvement to player action while we're on that topic? I know we haven't talked about it much.
I'm guessing that whole thing you just explained is gonna be at the beginning of the game when you first boot it up. Is that gonna be like a whole like a whole cutscene animation kind of thing?
Yes. I won't tell you much, but the tutorial is you fighting that wyvern.
Ooh.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That'll be cool.
So you will. I hate to
Oh,
be the
so
bearer of
it's-
bad news, but you will fight that wyvern. You will lose, and then you'll be damned, and that will be the start of your experience.
Neat.
In terms of game masters, will there be a possibility of like players ascending? Or like reaching, maybe not to the point of game masters, but like higher tiers?
I think Ascension's a really cool idea. To a game master, which is essentially a moderator wrapped in a bunch of narrative fluff. No. Obviously, we'll continue to pick people who help us moderate our games and our servers based off of merits, experience, time with us, and that'll kind of come through as servers increase if they ever do. But Ascension's a really cool idea that we have yet to kind of draft out, but it is something we've considered.
Maybe something like the mentor system in Final Fantasy.
That's a great point, actually. A lot of these systems will be ideally so in depth that people can do them as main things. I don't see why a mentorship program would be a problem. If anything, it's probably the best way to set up player interactions, so people don't have to take off their headsets and read from a wiki for an hour. So yeah, that's a really great point. We'll mark that down.
Star, I've
Any
got
other
two from
questions?
the Discord.
Sure. Since we're all hanging out here now.
Will there be a main quest line with some tangent ones that will have long and deep lore, or will it be more Kilton Chicken's adventures?
So there is, we talked about this a little bit in the last Q&A. I also talked about it a little bit in some of the forums. The bottom line is we won't know until we can see what we accomplish. Will it be story heavy as a game like Final Fantasy XIV? I'm very doubtful. The idea is that obviously quests should exist and there should be some sort of direction. But the whole kill 10 chickens thing baffles me. Not that it's a bad system by any means. It works and is productive for getting players to engage with those systems. Obviously, we want something similar, but that is more narratively founded. It'll never be like, hey, go kill a bunch of chickens. It'll be like, hey, I want chickens from a feather. However that happens, that's your prerogative, right? Your prerogative. But the general idea is that players specifically should be able to kind of go about those things their own way, and we don't want to limit them to specifics. Now, whenever it comes to quests that are actually, indebted with story, we talk about a main quest line. There is a very big focus on letting players influence the quest line, right? If any of you have ever played a game like Elite Dangerous, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. There is a very direct player focus. Especially on like the narrative and how the world is built. So the idea was, and we talked about this in the last Q&A, is we have a foundation of the world and its premise, and then on top of that we have initial startings, and then at the very top where things are currently happen, we have what the players are doing, how they are affecting and directing that story. I urge some of you to consider the possibility of a goblin war that is ever reigning, that you, the players, have control over based on how you do in those battles, in those skirmishes. There are definitely a lot of ideas on the table, but it's definitely going to be a lot more open than the very strict go get me this thing by doing this thing and come back to me. It's not very meaningful, and I don't like that system. I think there's too much potential in such a player-driven interaction for it to be so limited.
Cool. Follow up to that, can we expect to see some kind of town development related quests where as people progress the quest, the areas actually develop further, i.e., I go do said thing and it contributes to the building of this structure?
We haven't really considered it because there's the question of what is and isn't feasible, but that's definitely a really strong idea. We'll sit down and we'll talk about it. Obviously, right now, a lot of the consideration is just making sure that all of these systems work well with each other, but no, that's a great idea. Did you have a question before I go to demonic? I thought you said something earlier.
It was about character creation. How's that
Yes.
going to look?
These are all Asteria
Damn
assets. There was a picture in general, I think, how long ago was it? Was it 2 days ago, maybe 3 days ago, where I posted a picture of both my character and my wife's. And that's a pretty wide breadth of what you can see in customization. I mean, it's down to the point where we have different facial structures, facial hair, even different ear types, right? The races that we want to exist, we're not 100% sure on how much that'll span. Because I don't know if we'll get to the point of letting people be like gnomes or whatever, right?
Right.
But we want to make sure that there is enough customization to where individuality exists, but not too much to where it seems like that individuality amounts to nothing. So you'll see more as time goes on. But if you look at the pictures in updates, if you look at general pictures when I post stuff, that'll give you a really good idea of the direction we're taking.
Okay.
What's your question?
All right. And on the topic of the world building, on the opposite
Sure.
end of that, world events that cause destruction or causes drastic changes in the world in a negative way. You talked about the Goblin War and stuff. Is that something?
Yeah, so we, whenever I first kind of drafted that, I know that that's the base example that I've been using a lot is the Goblin War, but whenever I first drafted the idea, one of the first things that came to mind was what happens if you lose, right? Does life go on like normal? No, you could see, parts of this beautiful city be in a ruin. You can see the sky changed as a result of the changes to the ecosystem. There are much more monsters. They desecrate nature, the environment. We want to encourage players as a general front to work together to take care of these problems. Because at the end of the day, in all of these stories, that is what the problem is. There's this very large overarching issue, and if we don't band together as the only people who live here to fix it, then it will never get better. And so, yes, that is absolutely planned.
So you could say a lot of the narrative of Asteria is community driven rather than a set
Yes,
storyline.
It will be community driven, but it will be very guided by us. Not guided in the sense that we will choose the outcome for you, but we will set up those opportunities and we will work to bridge how player interactions play out to each other. One of the big challenges is going to be being able to do it across servers. There are going to be things that are probably server specific and then some things that are game specific. We'll know what those are whenever we get there. Any other questions on that? Jester, you got anything while we're hanging out?
I do. That's one I would like to know
Awesome.
the answer to as well. If the winter event
Sweet.
pops up, like snow on the ground, will I be able to build a snowman?
Mine's in the right place. Yes. So that is absolutely something we want to do. And seasonal changes like that and seasonal changes to mechanics won't just be limited to snow, because I know that's the easy and obvious one. You'll be able to gather more things in autumn. when the leaves are falling faster and when the plants are breaking their produce. In spring you'll be able to collect flowers easier, and you might get buffs because of the clarity of the air. We want to make sure that everything, even the seasons, are involved in the way that this game plays. So yes, and yeah, you can probably throw snowballs at each other. I'm sure. I don't see why that wouldn't happen.
That sounds
Give
awesome.
players seasonal
That's
allergies.
kind of fun, like for a
Oh,
winter event.
They get a debuff in spring.
No, seasonal depression. No, please.
So, a follow-up to that,
oh.
this is my curiosity. Does that mean monsters will be affected by the seasonal changes, i.e. in the spring there will be more of them and more younger ones, and in the fall there will be less of them as it is winding down because things are getting
Slay
cold?
the children.
Good question. It's actually going to be reversed. So you'll see more monsters in the winter than you will the spring. There's a narrative and canonical reason for that. You guys will know eventually, but just know that we have thought of these things. Did you have something?
This is Unity based, right?
Yes.
So in the future, like thinking future wise, would there be any sort of like a oh my gosh,
Custom avatars.
that plus like just user generated content, like a
on the
content market.
Sure. On the topic of player avatars, that's a hard no. With what we're trying to accomplish, it's not sustainable, and we hope to and it's also not narratively cohesive. Who here has? I know that there are some people that have. Who here has played Riff? Any of you, Riff XR?
I've heard it's terrible.
Okay, cool. Have any of you ever seen a screenshot of Riff where you have like Gandalf and a robot and fucking Tim Allen in a room all together, right? and they're fighting like a Goblin King or something. I think it's very cool to let players be their own thing, but at a certain point you run the risk of breaking immersion, right? And I want to make
Sounds
sure
like an
that
average
because
Black Cat
for
interaction.
immersion, it's a very narratively consistent experience. When we talk about customization, we want to make sure that it's good enough to where people are fulfilled in that sense without breaking the immersion for everyone else. In terms of player-generated content, it's a little shaky. We have some ideas for user gen content, specifically in the vein of like armor charms or tints for specific skins for stuff like armor pieces or weapons. And so there is a level of we want to do and we just don't know what we can yet.
Right. I
But
was
it
thinking
will
more
exist
along...
in some capacity.
Okay. I was thinking like, are you familiar with Warframe and their Tenno gen?
Yes.
Yeah, that's more along the lines of what I was thinking.
Yeah, you will probably be able to see stuff like that. Customization is going to go just past your just your character. I mean, it can apply to your armor. Eventually, we want you to be able to change everything about anything that you're wearing. The materials that your armor is made out of, right? The glow that your weapons give off if they have a glow. All down to finite details, because those are things that also should be individualized. Now, again, will there be like explicitly outside introduced user generated content? I'm not sure yet, but we'll see as time goes on.
Okay.
What's up, Damani?
So one of the big things about Final Fantasy is their modding community. It's kind of in the background and stuff.
Sure.
They don't condone it, but they don't like actively ban it.
Right.
How would that be in this game? Like client side stuff.
So, and I'm really glad that you bring that up. So there is a very fine line in modding whenever it comes to games between players doing things out of a creative vision that do not emit anything functional to the point of like stats, right? So you talk about what people would cheat for in an MMO. It's things like gil or levels or specific stones, right? Those things are obviously bannable the same way that they would be in Asteria. The thing is, I don't know if we can realistically support a modding community with what we're trying to make. Will we condone it? I guess it really just depends on what level is, right? A modding mod, what we're trying. I don't know. If other people also have the mod installed, one person can throw another person into space or whatever. As long as it doesn't actually move their position or break any server regs, I don't want hard ass on it. I think it's foolish to take such a part of any community into space or whatever. As long you just need to be very concerned about security. So it's not like we're going to be hunting modders, but we will have to be very careful about what we do allow and what we do actually go for when that time comes.
Yeah, I was more talking specifically in regards to the customization and the like adding in-game wikis, like systems in there that they can see the information in-game.
That's fine.
That kind of stuff is okay.
I'd be an asshole if I didn't. At that point, I feel like the only reason I'd be upset is if I was like, no, I'm supposed to be doing that. Yeah, no, I think that's silly. If you have mods that are informational, that are utility, that don't affect anybody else, that don't affect how the server perceives you as a player, if it doesn't run the risk of you having an overtly unfair advantage, and I don't just mean a display of information, then I don't care. I don't think any of us will care as long as it doesn't pose a security concern.
All right.
I have a question from the Discord.
Sure.
Let's see, combat-related question. Can we see some kind of element description where they like manipulate different variants of potions and illnesses? Like, for example, you need one type of antidote if being poisoned by a creature, and if you get poisoned by a plant, it would require a separate antidote.
We want to balance. I know the famous "you give me a direct question, I give you a not at all direct answer." But when it comes to dealing with stuff like variance and variability, especially whenever it comes to methods like potions or healing certain sicknesses, and yes, we have a whole medicine system plan. There does have to be a balance between something that is engaging and feels satisfying to do correctly, and something that is so far that it's needlessly complex. So I guess the real answer to that question is yes, but not in that specific circumstance. I think a better example would be if I were to, use a potion of fire or some sort of fire scroll, or alternatively, because this is the much better option, I have my mage buddy that's right next to me use a fire spell on my sword because we're fighting, plant creatures as opposed to a dragon or a rock monster or something. That kind of variability will exist, but we want to make sure it exists in the right places, if that makes sense.
Yeah, i.e., let's say I get bit or stung by a plant, and they both deal, say, purple poison damage. I will still use a purple poison potion to fix it.
Right. That's a good way of thinking of it. I'm sure we'll have a bunch of different status effects that are very distinct. So instead of it being like poison 1 and poison 2, it'll be like poison 1 and blight or something, so it's not so confusing.
Right,
we'll make sure that those are specific and drawn out.
Noted.
Any other questions while we're on that topic? Oh my god.
Is that your back popping?
Did you hear that?
I did.
Dude, it's been bad lately. Ever since I got out of the warehouse, it's been bad. Ever since I got in it, See, this is why I need to get full body, because you're like shaking your hips. I'm shaking my hips, and I'm doing like the most awkward dance at like a high school party, Anything?
Well, my movements have the side effect of swishing my tail back and forth, so.
Yeah, well, not all of us can be as cool as you.
I have a silly question.
Sure.
Are there going to be any sort of like guns, or is it all going to be like bows and magic or range?
The closest thing to guns that we'll have is crossbows.
Okay.
And that's like pushing it. Like that's like the limit.
Will there
we
be
definitely
like
don't want to make another rift.
enhancements you can do to up the fire rate or something?
Absolutely not. Actually, I'm sure that. So whenever we get into skills, because the crossbow skills are something that I've actually considered. Being rapid with tools and weapons will come down to your own ability to just be fast. Those skills will probably come down to damage, or you might be able to set up like a cluster shot where it's a rigged bag of arrows that whenever you fire it, it just just absolutely throws arrows in a direction.
I can see you doing that.
But a lot of the speed of what you'll be able to do will come down to your own abilities.
Fires it
So
from a glider.
what would like a skill tree look like for? I guess in general, just what would it be
Take
like
an example.
a tree, or would it be like?
Give me a weapon. Any weapon.
Just like a sword.
Just a sword. Okay, so I love sword and shield. My favorite play style in the planet. So let's talk about one-handed swords, right? So me as a one-handed sword user will eventually gain skills over time that are related to a one-handed sword. Now, will it be a tree where players can select individual skills as they level that skill up? Maybe, but it will be very limited in terms of branching, right? We want the general core experience to be the same, and we want a lot of the skills to be open-ended so players can make their own play style. If I have an ability where I take my sword and I point it at something and it shoots a beam at them, that's cool, right? I'm sure we can make it look and feel awesome. But the problem is, it's very limited in what you can do. It does not open the door for anything cool. For those of you who have, I don't know, the cool factor, whatever. But for those of you who have seen that very first, combat prototype, granted there wasn't a lot going on and the AI wasn't very good. But that sword skill that I have is super manipulatable, right? That sword skill that I've shown a few times, that can be a slash, that can be a stab, it can be a twirl. I can throw the sword. Right? It can be a very strong parry. I can use it to block. I can stick it into the ground and lift myself up. So the idea is that we have a bunch of skills that are very, very open-ended. In order to not overwhelm players and make it this big, impossible thing, we want to make sure that we don't have like 100 skills that you can learn with your sword, especially because one of the big goals is making sure that all of them can be done physically instead of you pressing a bunch of button combinations. But you will see that there's a little bit of branching just to provide a little bit more variety, but the main focus is just on open-ended skills. I'd say in terms of an actual sword, you could see like probably a dozen or more base skills, and some of those can change over time. They can be adjusted in a way that is more personal to you, but that way we allow the open-endedness to, give players that freedom.
So it's less of a linear like skill tree where you get this skill at this level, this skill at this level, this skill at this level, and more like a I don't know, like kind of like make your own playstyle type deal.
Mm-hmm. So you will unlock things at certain levels or at certain points, but it'll be so open that it doesn't feel like, oh great, I unlocked it, I guess I gotta wait till level 15 to get the next thing. No, we want you to be able to play and experiment with that one thing. There are people who, and I've been very fortunate, I've talked to people who do sword play for a living, because it's very important to me that we get this right. There are some people, I mean, I don't know if you've ever looked at a sword stance chart, there's fucking 50 of them, at least, right? That are standardized. There are going to be people that want to be big, heavy slashers, and there are people that want to be precise and use rapiers. So, at a certain point, we just kind of want to open that up. I think that, will that change? Will we add more skills that people can branch to? Probably. But no, yeah, I think you have it on the money with what we're trying to do.
Cool.
Demonic, and I'll get you after Fletcher.
In regards to the bows and the crossbows and stuff, how would managing ammo be? Would you have to actually pull an arrow from your bag or from your quiver? Or would you be able to just simply load an arrow?
You'll have to get them from a quiver. I know that there's an accessibility concern with reaching behind the back. We'll give players the options of keeping them at their hip or strapped on their chest for that accessibility. But you will have to physically grab them, and you will have to fill them as time goes on. One of the big crafting things, especially for people who do range stuff, will be crafting ammo. Even if it's simple as making a bundle of arrows. So yeah, that'll be
involved. And I assume there will be a difference between arrows and bolts.
Yes.
Would there be dipping, like putting effects on your arrows and stuff?
Yes. The same way that you can do dipping with swords, which I was about to tell you. or I say I was about to, I totally didn't, but
Potions.
there will be dipping with swords as well. um, but
That's
yeah,
cool.
not only will there be dipping, but there will also be imbuing, right? So, I talked about the idea earlier where a mage just lights my sword on fire. The same thing is surely possible with, bolts and arrows. The system mechanically is not hard to set up.
Two
That's
from
going to open up a
Discord
lot
in
of
the chat.
features.
Let me get Fletcher.
Yeah, so regarding pets and taming, is there like any idea?
God, I know. Everyone wants this one.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, as much as I absolutely would love to have a pet follow me around or some sort of familiar, and maybe have them do special things, I don't know how possible that is in the scope of this. So we talk about performance concerns, and the good thing is that most of the game, if done right, can run on a server. The problem is every player in VR is 3 players, right? Or 5 if you have full body. We'll talk about that a lot, but my 3 players are my left hand, my right hand, and my head. And on the client handles the rest, right? So if we're playing together, Jester will get updates on the position of my right hand, my left hand, and my head, and then his computer will do the rest, right? It'll pretty much handle all of the calculations in terms of body positioning and all that. Whenever you add something like a mount, there becomes a bit of an issue because not a mount, but whenever you add familiars and pets, there comes an issue with setting up what is and isn't appropriate behavior. And what I could do realistically is have that mount move on its own or that pet move on its own and then update that to the server. But then, there are problems with client exploitation, or we could have it run on the server, but it's more server load for something that really shouldn't be server-sided, or we could put, server checks for, client path authorization. I mean, it's a whole 9 yards. Is it something that we're going to experiment with early on to see if we can do? Yes. But it, unfortunately, is on the list of we will try, but no guarantees.
Sorry, in regards to the pets, you could make them
Sure.
like static in your player house, or have them do things in the homes instead of following the player
that's true.
around, or
That's
having
true.
them like
True.
sitting on your shoulder or on your head or something like that, so that you have a companion, but it's not causing problems.
That's true. I think that the ideal that I know a lot of people want is having your pet follow you around, and to interact with you and kind of the space around you. Like if you sit down, it sits down with you or something. But I think very simple features would be, implementable. The question is home life going to be exciting and in depth enough for you to want pets in your house? It might be, but we don't know yet. Like I said, it's one of those things that we'll just have to see. It's an ideal, but like I said, I don't know yet. Also, God forbid you're in a. By the way, if we do get that to work and your pets can be on your shoulders, I'm making it to where your pet can get hurt in combat. So you better watch for arrows.
Oh no.
Oh god,
Oh
okay.
no.
Yeah, leave your cat at home.
Shielded up.
Get pet armor.
You better make it where they can be buffed as well, though. They're going to be able
That's
to be
fair.
hurt. You
That's
can
fair.
buff them too.
That's
I
fair.
Also,
have
does
a
this just to protect your
question
pets?
regarding shields.
What's up, Graveyard?
So what kind of like shield abilities or skill trees would like shields have?
Great question.
And-
So shields, in particular, I've started a little bit of frameworking on
Ooh.
shields, and so a lot of it will be.
I died.
I know that we talked about open-endedness of skills. The good thing about a shield is that it's a supplementary tool, and typically not a primary one, though that won't prevent you from using it as such. Ideally, your skills, especially with a shield, will be geared towards giving you an upper hand with your main hand, or alternatively, with protecting other people. I mean, that's one of the biggest, uses of a shield. Who here has played Monster Hunter at all? Raise your hands. Okay, cool. A lot of us, huh? Good damn bit of us. I love Monster Hunter, right? I don't know if you guys know that. I'll say it again. I like Monster Hunter a lot. One of the most satisfying things in the world as a sword and shield player is to roll in front of the player that is, frozen in place or whatever, and to block a big fuck all fireball from the dragon that's shooting at it actively. And that kind of experience is one that a lot of people who have shields do. So I think the tree will kind of branch there between skills that will protect you as an individual or skills that you can use to protect others. Shields are also something that I want to be able to use to grab aggro. I want you to be able to throw your shield at a monster to get its attention, because it's embarrassing, right? The best way to get someone's attention is to embarrass them. Same with monsters. So there's definitely a lot planned in terms of what can be done, but we're gonna have to fine tune it. Though shields are one of the things that we're working on, so you'll know something sooner rather than later on that front.
Will there be like differences between shield types, like a buckler versus like a tower shield?
Yes, they will have different weights, and you will hate yourself if you try to drag a tower shield against a group of like goblins or something.
All right.
Which ties into strength. You can have, strength is one of those things that will improve over time, especially depending on what you do, certain skills that you pursue, and that will also affect your ability to carry heavy things and use them effectively.
Bringing up the topic of carry capacity, will that be something finite? Will everything have a weight capacity, or will it be more of a how many you have?
I think we're going to kind of focus on actual inventory limits as opposed to weight, because there's a certain point where
So
weight
physical
can be
capacity
implemented.
versus numerical capacity?
Right. I don't want it to where you are able to carry so much stuff that you can't move, because from an immersion perspective, how are you carrying all that shit at all, right? Is it all in your backpack that is this big?
Bag of holding.
So yeah, no kidding. Obviously there's a decision to be made about the inventory system itself. The current framework that we have, the current prototyping, is a bag that includes both a bunch of quick slots for important stuff and then a general kind of area UI for items that you wouldn't grab on a whim, like certain crafting stones or something like that. So it's going to be kind of a hybrid system in terms of physicality and just a general, you hold all of your shit in this one spot that you can scroll through. But in terms of weight, I don't think the weight system will be so much to where you can become just grossly over encumbered. I think that'll come with the equipment that you have equipped before anything else.
Okay. One other thought, more less of a
Sure.
question. Please don't make a Dark Souls inventory.
No, Harpath.
Yeah, I can't stand it.
Graveyard Headset died.
Unfortunate. Rest in peace.
How many different weapon types are we looking at regarding just how
I'd have to look at the
if
list.
you had to, I was gonna say if you could get I just estimate a number approximately.
God, what?
Hold on, I'm pulling it
15,
up.
20?
That one's actually
Pull up the list.
in Ask the Devs, isn't it?
It wasn't Ask the Devs. But we'll use this as a clip.
FAQ?
Jester's gonna go ahead and pull it up real quick. We have it on the list.
No.
Because that also has
there's-
changed since then too.
There are 6 segments of weapon types, followed by each having at least 6 weapons or more in that category.
Mhm.
So there's upwards of,
Ooh.
what is that, 36?
Yeah.
So
That- that
6
is including
parent
shield
categories,
variety.
36 individual weapons.
Yes.
That's some
I'm
good
here for
variety.
it.
I like things.
Yeah, we do.
A follow-up
Does anybody have any
question.
questions on? Yeah, go for it.
So, because we've talked about farming in the past, when it comes to
Mhm.
animals, will I be able to take a couple of them, stick them in a pen, and have my own little army of like bunnies that I can like kill and cook?
I'm doubtful. I don't know how feasible the ranching is. I don't think that it's going to be on the docket like crop farming is. Maybe in the future, if there's just an overwhelming demand for it and we have an overwhelming means to do so, then yeah, but I'm doubtful.
Cool. And then an update on some in-depth questions I tried to answer.
Sure.
So, this is a wordy one. So I guess the following up from the reason why I asked is, oh god, hold on, let me just zoom to the end of it. How will you combat the confusion on how to find internal mechanical and item usage descriptions? Most likely item descriptions. It's a current work in progress. I'm sure there will be books and stuff out there in the world that you can find on that as well.
Okay, so I've thought about this for a minute. Let me sit down. I need to sit down. My knees are killing me. I've been around all day. We have talked about setting up. Boom, perfect. Okay, so we've talked about, some of the systems regarding information, because systems that procure and display information is extremely important whenever you have such a big system involved. I love Township, but Township's information system is not great, and that's why it can be so intimidating for new players to get into systems like crafting or blacksmithing, right? I think one of the things that we want to do is let there be a player element to it. Obviously, we want a baseline piece of information about every single item, every single thing that you can do in the game, because it's a game standard, right? Everything should be documented. At the same time, there is a level of, especially whenever it comes to rarer things, rarer items, rarer services, let the players discover it. Let those discoveries be a front for the player base, Will we actually end up going that route? I don't know yet. It might end up being too far-fetched an idea or too unintuitive of a goal, which in that case, that's okay. But I really do like the idea of there being an exploration and a discovery on the player side. The way that we'll probably handle this in a way that makes sense is we'll have like an atlas style book. We'll probably have some for individual skills, specifically because those things need to be separated. Obviously, I don't want to just throw every system into the game into a single piece of informational collective. So, any questions on that? It's one of those like weird subjects that's kind of like just get through it and see what you can do.
If not, I've got another skill question.
Sure.
So would players be able to make their own skills similarly to how Yuki made her special attack in SAO? My response for that was kind of, i.e., I know we were working with a like power drain skill. Like you'd power up for costs of X stamina or X mana, you would do more damage, and then i.e., you get to choose the strike that fits it best. It's kind of undesignated. It just it's a cost, but hey, if a stab's gonna work better, you get the stab. If a swing works better, then you do a swing.
Yeah, for you to like instantiate and create your own skills, it's not feasible with the systems that we're trying to accomplish, and that's why we want to make sure that a lot of these skills that you do get are open-ended, so you can do your own thing. But for you to quite literally build your own skills, that's a level of intrusion into like the game and the way it works that it's not feasible. Definitely not on this level. So.
I have a question.
Sure.
So one of the recent posts in Ask the Devs, I was looking to see like the planned skill lists are. I see one of them is under the non-combat life skills just says guarding. What does that entail?
Great question. So, Solara, right? I can't believe no one else has asked me about this before. Solara, right? Solara is a big town with a lot of people. And what is outside of Solara? Can anybody tell me?
Monsters.
Monsters. And a fucking lot of them. Remember I told you guys the story a minute ago about how the land was plagued with monsters? right? It didn't just stop
Okay.
being plagued with monsters. And so the idea is that someone has to at least protect the walls of Solara. And so one of the skills that I think would be very cool to implement, which would be possible, is allowing players to serve as guards of Solara. There are people who do like that style of gameplay quite a lot. Now, will it be to the point where you can like arrest players or whatever? I don't think so. But I think it would be cool if you could do, small combat patrols. If you pick up bow skills, you can do archery guards. There are a lot of possibilities with these systems. The idea is that, and I know that this isn't talked about too much, but it shouldn't be a very like strong line between players and NPCs. That should mesh very heavily, right? Because at a certain point, you understand with a lot of these games that that NPC is doing something that I'm never going to ever be able to do. And that's unfortunate, right? Not everyone all the time wants to be, the great destroyer of worlds, the great wyvern slayer. Some people want to engage with those loops because it's fun. And it's fun to do it with other people who also engage with those loops. Let's say some big monster is slamming into the wall of Solara, and you and 3 other guards are on a whim assigned to go deal with it. Those are stories, and those stories drive the player experience. So that's what guarding is. Just plain simple. You
Okay.
get to be a town guard.
So I guess a follow-up question for guarding.
Sure.
Can players commit crimes?
That was actually what I was going to ask. Just like a morale system.
I'm not
Sorry.
saying I'm going to.
No,
I just want to know if I
you're
can.
Right. No.
I will.
I understand. It embarrasses me to admit it, but I haven't considered this that much. Usually in a lot of these games, you are not allowed to commit crimes because they just don't let you. Yeah, I could see it being possible. One thing that we did actually want to implement was PvP, in the sense that players could choose to enable PvP if they wanted to, but they didn't have to, right? And as such, there are players who could very well kill other players, and that is a dynamic. If you're a town guard and you have a murderer in your town, obviously that opens the door for an interaction that I do think that we would like to explore. In terms of general crimes, in terms of like stealing stuff, I don't know. We'll have to see what's possible. There is a level of like, player interaction that could be hurt by that experience. Like if I, craft this beautiful gemstone sword and you walk up and you go, "Hey, thanks," and you grab it and walk out, then obviously I'm now having a bad as fuck day. You've ruined that gameplay loop for me. So there's a level of balance, but I do think it's a really cool idea. We'll just have to see how much it fits into, the economy loop and the gameplay loop for the town.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe keep it to stealing from like NPCs or something.
Right.
Instead of players.
Maybe have it be generally small things. I guess if you get better at it, you could probably steal better things. I don't know.
Whole carton of apples.
Have a whole skill tree for it.
I think it would be fun if you stole like an apple
got-
or something, and like
you
10
gotta
guards
have the
with
cards full
crossbows
of
just started running you
cabbages.
down. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but yeah.
Skyrim logic.
Yeah, no kidding.
Cast an invisibility
chicken,
potion,
get
throw an
him.
invisibility potion at it, and then just move it.
No, I just need a bucket put on the head.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that front while we're on the topic? Hi, come here. I hear you. Where are you? Where are you?
There's a cat.
Where are you?
Cat,
Speaking
what's
of
wrong?
pets.
What's
I
wrong?
don't like how he
baby?
looked at me when he said that.
Why are you? I'm sorry.
Jester is like a royal family pet.
Any other questions while things are kind
I
of...
do have one question about guilds.
Sure.
I know you've touched on this when it comes to like shops and stuff, but when guilds go inactive for like a period of time, are they going to be like disbanded at some point? And if possible, I do have an idea for like implementation for this. Is making guilds pay like some sort of tax, like the other person said, for like shops and stuff. and after a certain amount of time, that tax not like getting paid, the guilds get disbanded.
Hmm.
That's
So,
my
so there, we've kind of touched on guilds a little bit, and that's because the real challenge, that we have yet to tackle is figuring out to what extent guilds will be able to operate, right? Because our protocol for setting up guilds and seeing what is and isn't possible will depend on a few things. Will they be able to have instanceable guild halls, or will they be actual physical places in the world? Will they be able to set up guild shops and sell items to the community and to the economy, and players in the guild get a part? Are guilds going to be able to run guild-wide raids or do guild events? I don't know yet. And a lot of those systems, a lot of those rules depend on that extent. Ideally, we want a system where being in a guild is more than just being in a group and getting money for it. The idea is that people in guilds will do so for a purpose, right? Whether that purpose be to run patrols out in Asteria and make sure that players are protected, or to gather the finest of materials and either turn them for a profit or do so for exploration. There might be exploration guilds if we do exploration right. So there are a lot of questions about guilds right now, and I think a lot of that I can't answer reliably until we know more. Just know that we've put a lot of thought into it.
there we go. Freaking microphone switch. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions while we're on the topic? Demonic, you were killing it today. What's your question?
In regards to player housing, how interactive will the home be? Will you be able to sleep in your bed, have your own working kitchen, have things like your own little blacksmith area, stuff like that?
Yes, no. Maybe. So the idea with player, I know that was a bunch of non-answers. But the idea with player housing is that it exists as a space that is individual to you, and also it exists as a space of convenience, but to an extent, right? So the ideal is that you have a small kitchen where you can do some cooking, but you can't go crazy. There will be public kitchens where you can go and you have the full array of tools to your disposal, right? Same with blacksmithing. You won't have a whole forge in your house, but you might be able to upgrade that forge and do more things at the expense of not having room for other things, right? You ideally will be able to customize your house to a decent extent. Now, there are some questions on that, especially if we're going to allow players to be in other players' houses, which as a mechanical concept is not hard. But we haven't fleshed a lot of those questions out. But on a very short note, I'd say yes, you will be able to sleep in your bed. Sleeping in your bed will buff you the same way that eating in restaurants or relaxing in towns will give you buffs. You will be able to engage with a lot of those systems on a very basic level at the very least in your home. That will give players the opportunity to kind of engage with those systems, even if they're not fully prepared to commit with them yet. So short answer, we're not 100% sure what it's going to look like, but definitely in that direction.
All right, and one more thought on that. Sharing your home with
Sure.
another player. Like you have your partner or a friend or something like that, and you want to share a space. How would
That's
that
a challenge.
work? Especially because
that's a
stuff like interacting with things and changing the home. How much permission can you
sure.
give another person?
Right. There's definitely a challenge there. I think the smartest way to implement something like that, and I think the way that we would if we ever did, is we have you are allowed to add other people as a resident to your home, and then you are allowed to adjust their permissions like on specific basis. Like, can this person move stuff around? No. Okay, well, can they craft stuff? Sure. Can they go in a chest? They can go in their chest, but not mine. So if we do end up doing that, which that's a challenge, but if we do end up doing that, because I'd love to, I think housing should be more meaningful. That's the way that we would do it. All right, you had your hand up for a minute. What's up, Mister?
Furthering on the house, the idea of like houses and all that, will the contents of the house stay consistent through like per instance? For example, can I, given the limitations of an inventory, can I just use my house as my personal storage?
Not physically, no. It definitely won't be like a Ghost of Tabor thing where you can put something down on a counter and it stays there. What'll probably end up happening is you have, I know, heartbreaking. What'll probably end up happening is you'll have, inventory items like chests, or storage containers, that you can, put things into and draw from at will. But will you be able to store things physically, like in a physical space? I don't see it being possible if we want this to work.
Okay, so now there's gonna be chests. How will those work? Will those be like a menu thing, or will it be physical storage? Like you can actually see the items in there, and you can take them out and put them in.
I think it's probably going to.
interactive AI.
I think
UI,
it
sorry.
would have to be initially more like a menu than it would physical, especially because a lot of these QOL things are going to have to be things that we implement after a lot of testing data has come in, to see what is and isn't realistic. If you have a chest that can hold way more than a chest should be able to hold, then it might not be reasonable for you to reach into a chest and grab something. We could take a hybrid approach like Blade and Sorcery does, where you have a bunch of instance grids that you can scroll through, but you grab the item from that grid to pull it out. It's possible that we do that.
That would be cool.
I don't know yet. We'll have to see what's possible with our framework.
So, I guess building off of that, then for like
Sure.
Weapon and armor stands to display things, will we have things like that implemented?
Maybe. I don't see it being the most impossible thing in the world. We haven't been able to really flesh out the plan for housing, because here's the thing, and I want to make sure that we're all very clear on this. If you set the plan before knowing it's possible, you're gonna hurt yourself, right? Zenith did that, and I'm sure the Zenith devs, I know a lot of them worked their asses off to get some of those systems to work. Player housing doesn't exist in Zenith, not in a way that is substantive, right? And there were a lot of promises there. The last thing that I want to do is say, hey, sure, you'll be able to put whatever you want up on the wall, but I don't know how possible that is with our system. I don't know if it was obvious, but there's a very large player interaction approach. So I do absolutely want to give players the space to be their own. But at the same time, we want our systems to be engaging enough while not being overwhelming to where you don't want to be in a house by yourself. You want to be out in the town with people, whether it be in the gardens with a friend looking up at the stars, or sitting, on a park bench and talking about your day. But that's not to say that that won't be a system that is fleshed out. Obviously, housing is something that is very important to, me at the very least. It's very important to people who play MMOs who actually want to exist in the world without just, thank you. All right, well, my battery's low too. Awesome. But it's important to me that people feel like they're a part of the world and not just, they appear in the world and then they disappear from the world when they're done playing. And housing is a big part of that. So I know it's not exactly the most substantive answer, but we'll see what we can do.
Okay. I much prefer the I don't know yet answer to yes and then nothing.
We don't want to bullshit. We're so tired of not having this game. I think a lot of people are. And VR has been, and people who have promised big VR experiences have fallen short on their promises so much recently. That's why we started this in the first place. We will do everything in our power. Well, first of all, transparency isn't hard. You don't need power to do that. But we will do everything in our power to actually fulfill the things that we are confident in presenting. So there's that. Any other questions while we're just hanging out? Do you have a question, or were you just jumping for funsies?
Accidentally pressed the button.
No, you're good. All right, Jessica, go ahead.
For those who don't want to put down their own roots in a town, there's some kind of mechanic implemented to where I carry around some kind of item that would act like a pocket dimension in a sense for a subspace where my home could reside?
Ooh.
No. Short
That
answer, no.
seems suck.
You mean I can't have my own
So
private island?
you're right. You're right. I'm being cruel. So seriously, the idea is if you don't want to, settle down in town, you don't have to. But the alternative is being out in the wild. What we are going to do is give players tools to where they can do a lot of those systems out in the wild if they don't want to have a house in town or do their own thing. Because guess what? Housing is limited. It's a limited thing, especially for MMOs. Handling it will probably be able to do in a way that gives as many people as possible a shot of owning homes. But at the end of the day, it is limited, and it's never accessible to anybody because houses are expensive. Especially in the concept of an MMO. Has anyone tried to buy a house in Final Fantasy XIV here? Oh my god, it's hell on earth. Okay, I'm on Mateus right now. I've been house hunting for like a year and a half. It's terrible.
I barely
I'm so
managed
sorry.
to get an
No.
apartment there, so
I'm not starting a guild. I'm not starting a guild just to get a house. I don't want a guild home. So the idea is that, especially whenever it comes to residing in a place or having some sort of small setup that you can call your own, you will be able to set camps. You will be able to have sleeping bags and set campfires and use hand tools to do things like cook and craft and smith. All those things will be provided to players because we want that experience to not just be limited to you've been playing the game for 4 years and you have 50, I don't know, trillion gold or whatever. So here's a house. Now you can craft somewhere that isn't a crafting station. Like we want those things to be very open. I would say that the idea of a pocket dimension where you have your own place, I don't see it being feasible, and I don't see it being very substantive, even if that was the direction that we took, only because there's so much that goes into fully customized, non-instanced housing. Yeah, I don't see that being the direction that we take, as unfortunate as it is.
So all I'm hearing is I could
What's up,
be
Demonic?
homeless now, so I'm not later.
the possibility of maybe an inn system for people like that don't want to plant roots, or
Yes.
maybe like rentable apartments like Final Fantasy does for people who don't want a full house.
So originally we were actually going to do just an apartment system because it's super easy from a technical standpoint to handle. Or sorry, it's not easy, but it is simple. Because instead of instancing out a house with a custom exterior or having it exist in the space or having, a player house replace a non-player house whenever they load in, it is just you go to the apartment building and then you go into your apartment, right? The apartment building doesn't change. It's still the apartment building. So initially we actually did want to only stick, or I guarantee that apartments will exist in the game. That is not a hard thing to implement. I'm fully confident in those abilities. Housing is where the problem comes in. Will there be inns for people who don't want apartments who want to rest in town? Yes. Eventually, we might even open the door for players to run inns. I don't know yet. It's kind of a stretch goal. But I absolutely see it being possible.
Just watching
Just
that
wanted to come say hi. Willow, come here.
Me?
Ooh, is that field that you showed us going to be in the next test build? Because my gosh, that grass. I have never seen anything better.
What's wrong, baby?
Yeah,
You want attention?
Tasty.
What was the question?
No, baby.
I'm sorry, I tuned everything out. What was your question?
Wait, what's up,
I
baby?
was asking if the field that was shown was
okay.
going to be in an upcoming. If that field's going to be in an upcoming build, because I have never seen better grass in my life.
Yes.
Looks good.
Like
Doesn't it?
not even hyper realistic games.
It's exciting. I know I probably shouldn't be such a sap, but I remember taking off my headset almost in tears, and I went and hugged my wife because I realized how beautiful the world that we were making is. So yeah, that terrain system will be on the next test. We want to get some performance benchmarks there, but mine ran great. And that opens the door very well because I know that a lot of quests linked will run at a target of 72, and I ran at 100, which is a lot of variance to go downwards, which makes me happy. So yeah, that'll be in the next test. We'll have that terrain system test with a benchmark, so people can see how that's going to run for them.
I'm assuming that panel that you made is going to be there as well.
Yes. It's my new favorite thing. It saved us so much trouble after the first one, which was very foolish of me to try to open up anyways.
Minor error.
Yeah. Any other questions while we're on the topic of terrain systems, of grass? Do any of you want to know about shader culling since we're on the topic?
Why not? I would love to learn.
Great. So you have a bunch of vertexes that make up a polygon, right? And so those polygons and the vertexes of those polygons can be adjusted in real time with a shader. And that shader itself can be instantiated between different blades of grass, and it saves a lot of processing power.
Huh.
And so all of those go through a color pass and then a
things.
shade pass.
Yeah,
it kind of.
Players to like, yeah. If you allow the players to like control those shaders, like for like those on the lower ends, they can give them better like dynamic things to kind of like boost their FPS so they're not lagging as much.
You know, we started this as a joke, but you're absolutely right. By giving players a little bit of control over the way that shaders are applied to specifics, you can absolutely change things like performance of systems. Which is something that obviously we have a whole list of technical settings planned so people can actually enjoy the experience without it being a slideshow.
Yeah. That's what I'm looking forward to because my headset sucks.
Any other questions while we're on the downswing of things? Minstrel, don't use that. It sucks. I have to fix it. Now they can't hear me.
What if I have one that's completely unrelated to everything we've talked about?
That's fine.
So when it comes to Oreos, do you like yours with peanut butter or milk?
Milk? What the hell? What is wrong with you?
What?
Why is
Are you
everyone hating on
serious?
peanut butter, man?
Are you serious?
I've tried peanut butter.
Yes. Thank you.
You're both banned. I'm banning both of you. For anybody that is curious, we have 2 spots at Damage Point Digital opening up tonight. Take applications in about a week or so.
For
Oh,
PB&J,
yeah, I
do
can
you
check out
want
more of the
bread
time.
or tortillas?
We're not doing this. Back when I used to stream regularly, there was a whole stream where people asked me if cereal was considered soup or if like tacos were considered or hot dogs were considered sandwiches or whatever, and I'm not doing that again, dude. I did my time. Okay,
They are.
we're not starting that. Yeah, it's great, man. Whatever. I don't care. Look, I know that and it's important that I continue to remind everyone of this. Not that any of you need the reminder, but it's important that it's heard. I know very often, games are rushed by studios or developers do not have insight taken into account. I have the very fortunate position of doing this on my own volition with my team, who is, they're all very passionate about this project. But most importantly, there's a central vision at play. I know it's sappy, but I look up and I look at the world around us, even in VR chat. Even though I know how much better it looks in Asteria, but I look at this world around us and I'm excited for it to be real. I'm excited to, walk down, the plaza of the main square and say hi to a player that I met a day ago. Or to go into a player blacksmith and buy my next weapon from him specifically because I've heard good things, not seen good things, heard good things from people I know. There is absolutely an incredible experience waiting, and I think that we have all waited far too long for it. I know that there is a general instinct to not shit talk or to not be critical of games, especially in production. I know that there are two sides to it, one that is just mostly hate, and then one that is just like overwhelming and not justified support. It is important to me that all of you, if necessary, speak your mind. We will never ban you or remove you or reprimand you for telling us that you think that we're doing something wrong. This is an experience that I and my team have wanted for a very, very long time. And god damn it, I am not going to let it fall apart through ego. It's very stupid. I want to play this game, I think, more than anybody I've known personally in the last 10 years. So, I mean, here's to making it happen. What I am very fortunate about, or I'm very grateful for, is there are people who have come in who have developed other games. I can't give too much information. I know that there's some privacy concerns, but the creator of Project Einkrad, we've been chatting, and he's personally fond of this project. I'm also very fortunate to have recently spoken to someone from Bohemia Interactive that thinks that we're making all of the right calls whenever it comes to our design philosophy and what we want to accomplish. That, along with all the support that all the supporters have given me, has proven to me that this is the right thing. That this game is going to happen, and it's going to happen because we said it's going to. I don't know. I think it's been a long time coming, but I'm very happy with where we're at and what we're doing. So, for you guys to be here, I mean, thank you. That's all I can say. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm excited.
And thank you for this awesome experience.
Hopefully the next time we get here, I say hopefully, there's no reason it shouldn't. I won't lie, as much as I'm sure some of you have told by the fact that some of the walls have holes in them. The VRC world is kind of an afterthought. My primary focus has been on developing the game and making as much forward progress as I can, because again, we also had that plan to get to a Kickstarter phase. But right now, things are good. We're making quick progress. The terrain system's looking good. I started a framework for cooking. We're actually about to bring another developer onto the team, which is very exciting.
Nice.
But yeah, does anybody have any other questions for me, for our team? They don't even have to be game related. They can just be random questions. What's up, Sammy?
Can I put in a request for a beast race for no obvious reason? I swear.
No.
Sure, go ahead.
That's actually kind of related to a question I had. Depending.
No, go ahead.
I can ask my question anytime. You go ahead.
Mine's not really a question. The request is just a beast race. I'm not picky about a beast race. I love seeing them.
We'll see. I don't. So originally, when I was thinking of races, the one thing that I thought about was a cat race. But god damn it, we keep flying too close to Final Fantasy, and Square Enix is going to kick my fucking door down. So, we have to be very careful.
You
about
go
what
for
we do
more
and
of a
don't do.
Khajiit type situation, or the Argonian.
That's
Can't
true.
go
That's
wrong
true.
with fairies.
Or dogs.
I can't just have cat ears and tail. Come on.
I guess you could. I mean, in Monster Hunter, you don't need
I
to be a
do think a
wyvern.
canine
Have
race would be
wyvern
very,
ears.
very original.
Demi-humans.
I also see you can playing with
Much
those
for
wings.
demi-humans, right?
Beast folk, you know.
What's up?
Those wings are looking fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will say, if you are a fairy, I hate to be that guy, but immersion's important. So if you're a fairy and you get stepped on by something, you'll probably just die outright.
Oh, I know. That's some fun.
Big fan of it.
Okay, please make the death screen for that. You've been squished.
Yeah. Cause of death flying.
You've made
Yeah, it'd be
bad
funny as hell.
decisions.
I assume the same thing would go for someone that is very large.
I don't know. So honestly, whenever it comes to player races, we haven't really, and I know it embarrasses me to admit that I haven't put more thought into it, but we haven't really put a lot of thought into races that are dynamically different from humanoids. even in size, I think that there are going to be some aspects of the game that are massively different. Because if we have players that are different sizes and fundamentally work in different ways, then we have to develop the mechanics with all of that in mind, and that can be a very big challenge. One that might be outside the scope of this project, so I don't know. Will we have small feature changes that would imply different races or species? Sure, we've already started implementing them. Will there be any races that are fundamentally different? I'm not sure. I'm doubtful, but we don't know until we know.
I still
Okay.
have hope.
Sox, you had a question?
Oh, that was it. It was Beast
Okay,
Folk
cool,
races.
cool.
So.
Oh.
Sox, just clarify to the room here that you're full body, right?
Yes.
Can you go ahead and do a backflip for me?
No.
I mean, we're worth a shot, right?
Just show it off to everybody.
You know what? Hold on.
Does the straight animation backflip?
I don't
Those
have
I think you have
this.
to put on the avatar manually. Oh yeah, here we go. Yep, there we go. Yep.
There you go.
No, it's not working. It's not working. Do what I want.
Well, I'm pretty sure you have to go.
Oh my god.
I just have to keep moving my head.
Something like that.
You just
You go
gotta get in the
down.
old.
Oh my god.
There you go.
Jesus.
Physics.
Ow.
Right, awesome. Does anybody have any more questions for me, for the game, for us? Anything at all?
When will the testing start?
Good question. So we just I just posted that second testing application. It'll probably be a couple of weeks, maybe closer to a month. Because I want to this is the point where we've gone past the base benchmark, what can people handle. I want to absolutely flesh out that one area by the big tree. And see what systems can handle based off of that. Because that's probably going to be the most intensive position from a rendering standpoint. Damn. Sorry, it'll be the most intensive position from a
The quest usually do that when the power's low.
Oh.
Yeah.
They kind of spin you around.
So yeah, it's telling me to leave. But we're gonna work on getting rendering benchmarks. So I'm really just gonna work on fleshing out that scene along with my team, and then we're gonna have benchmarks literally there. Because ideally, that will be the most visually intensive spot in the game, which means, from a perspective of performance, we'll be able to get really good, benchmarks on what can be handled, what we might have to adjust. We can start optimizing our world for that system, and then we can go from there. So I'd say about a couple weeks to a month at this point.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome.
I do have
And
one
that's for
last
the field?
question.
Sure.
In regards to the applications and stuff like that, will people who didn't get access to the current NDA, closed beta, stuff like that, have a chance in the future to take part in it?
Yes. I don't know if you're asking because you're one of the people who didn't get access.
Yeah.
But so first of all, we had that first one, and the reason that a lot of those applicants didn't go through is because I made a very large mistake with the doc where I had no way to track who was who, which is a problem. I need names for an NDA, and I need to know who to give them to, so I'm not giving out first and last names to random people. You have nothing to worry about, even if I haven't looked at your application. You've asked awesome technical questions today, so I don't see it being an issue. That being said, if some of you didn't get hit on first turn or you haven't gotten your applications back, first of all, if you haven't filled out the new application, go do that. And then also, I will go look at the responses for that tonight and over the next couple of days so I don't miss anybody.
All right, sounds good.
Sweet. All right, guys, this has been a lot of fun. I wish I was a little more prepared, but you know what happens. Next time we come here, this world should look a lot better. It needs some work, but I got it out just in time. Hopefully,
it looks cool.
I'm
Looks
maybe I'm
awesome.
being a perfectionist, but I'm not happy with it. There's a lot that can be fixed.
You are. You're being too
also-
harsh on yourself.
Blah blah blah. So the menu over there, it has mirror toggles that are not super performant, which is a problem. I will also be adding music over the next week because I need to finish the main theme for Solara. We'll also be adding some wind and some wind chime SFX, as well as some other ambience. Ideally, I know that we've talked about it before, but I want this world to be a spot where people want to hang out, which means that even though it's not my primary focus, I will continue to develop it and optimize it and make it as performant and fleshed out as possible. Because this exists as a great spot, right? If someone comes here to this place and they go, "Whoa, what is all this?" You know, it looks great, it performs well. What is this? Oh, well, it's a snippet of Solara from Asteria, a game that's being developed. That's a very strong point for us because I don't know if you guys know this, but one of the biggest audiences that we have is hobbyists, right? You know, that's generally where a lot of people that want to play this game lie. It's not people who have never played VR ever, or I mean, granted, okay, so there was one dude that paid for the founders tier and then immediately bought a VR headset he had never played before. So there are some people who will come in and then just jump right into it. But for the most part, right, we are looking for people who are you know, inundated with VR, who are a part of that hobbyist group, and that's why VR Chat's a very strong platform. So expect more updates on this. I'm gonna wave off now. I'm starving. I want food. But if you guys have questions, put them in Ask the Devs.
Add
Make
a
sure that no
night
one else has
mode
asked
for
that
those of
question.
us that are light sensitive to this world.
Good question, or a good point. I
Yes,
will as soon
yes,
as I
yes.
figure out why baking lights doesn't work. This will probably be, honestly, I'll probably set it to be night by default because I think it would be better.
Mm.
Honest to God, the only reason that it's not night now is because I couldn't get it working in time. And obviously
Oh.
that time crunch was there, but that'll be better for next time.
Here's a very important question. What are you going to have to eat?
So me and my partner meal prepped for this week. It is a mix of mashed potatoes and cauliflowered rice, as well as cowboy butter
Ooh.
chicken.
Well, that sounds good.
That
Ooh,
sounds
that sounds good.
delicious. I'm gonna be having hamburgers.
By the way,
myself.
whenever I develop a lot of the cooking mechanics, I'm doing so with experience. Some of the skills that I have to outsource for, like blacksmithing and fishing, but I will be doing a lot of studying on cooking and you know, what feels good to do, you know, as personally as possible.
I can't wait.
Hi.